Welcome to the 7th lecture in the Henry VII series. Today we will examine how Henry governed each of the different regions. This lecture will be split into 4 parts. The first section will examine Henry's attempt to govern Ireland. The next section will examine his more successful governance of Wales. The third section will examine how he tightened control over the north. And finally, we will examine the role of the Justices of the Peace, who acted as an important link between central and regional government. Let's first examine the most autonomous of regions, Ireland. Since William the Conqueror, English kings had tried to impose royal control over Ireland with very little lasting success. The English kings could claim the title of Lord of Ireland, which was a title granted to Henry II in 1155 by Pope Adrian IV. This meant it was a feudal monarchy, with the king as the feudal overlord, but it was also a papal fiefdom, with the pope ranking above the king in terms of authority. This would cause serious problems for the Tudors following the break with Rome. The English crown governed Ireland out of the Pale of Dublin, on the east coast, including an Irish parliament. In reality, however, power lay in the hands of clan chieftains. These were earls who could track their ancestry back to the original chiefs that had ruled the different regions of Ireland. They governed their respective regions with very little intervention from England. Even the Pale of Dublin had limited reach due to the topography of the east coast of Ireland. The Wicklow Mountains lay just 25 miles to the south of Dublin. Ireland was a vastly rural country with huge stretches of uncultivated moorland that was sparsely populated. This made it very difficult for any type of central government from Dublin. When Henry ascended the throne in 1485, the Earl of Kildare was the most powerful chieftain in Ireland. He acted as Henry VII's deputy. However, he played an active role in the Lambert-Simnel Pretender plot by allowing for the coronation of Simnel in Dublin in 1487. He then later showed sympathy for Perkin Warbeck, who first landed in Ireland in 1491. Henry attempted to remove Kildare from his position. In 1494, he replaced Kildare with an English gentleman called Sir Edward Poynings. Sir Edward Poynings was appointed as the Lord Deputy of Ireland in 1494. He introduced a new law called Poynings Law, which tightened up the link between Westminster and Dublin. The law stated that all bills had to be sent to Westminster and approved by the English Parliament, who could amend or reject the law. Only laws that were returned to Ireland with the Great Seal of the King of England could be passed. This was very significant as it reduced the power of the chieftains to pass their own laws and therefore reduced Ireland's independence. Sir Poynings' time as Lord Deputy of Ireland was short-lived, however. It soon became clear that he could not command the respect of the Irish nobility and so was recalled back to England. The Earl of Kildare then resumed power. However, Poynings' law remained in place and was only repealed in 1878. Henry VIII would later use this law as a basis to further extend English control of Ireland. Let's now examine Wales. The Norman and Plantagenet kings had sought to conquer Wales for over a century, building a large row of castles on the Anglo-Welsh border. In 1284, during the reign of Edward I, Wales fell under English control. There had been many attempts since to regain independence as a principality. By 1485, Wales was under the control of the Council of Wales and the Marches. The phrase Marches simply means the border counties. The council met in Ludlow Castle, in Shropshire, on the Anglo-Welsh border. Traditionally, it was the responsibility of the king's heir to become Prince of Wales and to rule the region from Ludlow Castle. Henry VII found it easy to govern Wales for one simple reason: he was Welsh. He was born in Pembroke Castle and he had Welsh ancestry on his father's side that goes back to Rhys ap Gruffydd, who had ruled Wales when it had been an independent kingdom. Therefore, of all the regions, Wales was the one easiest for him to control. Before Bosworth, he chose the Pembrokeshire coast, in a place called Mill Bay, to land his invading force. He even flew the iconic Red Dragon when marching into battle. As a result, the Welsh nobility were largely in support of Henry as their new king. Many received promotion, prestige and wealth under his regime. It was traditional for the king's heir to take up residence in Ludlow Castle and govern there as Prince of Wales, giving him the much-needed experience of governance to run the country. In 1501, Prince Arthur married Catherine of Aragon. Straight after the wedding, they took up residence in Ludlow Castle. However, only 6 months later, Arthur died of the sweating sickness. His brother Henry was too young to govern Wales and so never took up residence there. Royal presence was not necessary though. Wales continued to be run by a council of men who supported Henry as their king and posed no threat to the crown. In contrast, the north proved more problematic. Whilst the north had been part of England since Anglo-Saxon times, it remained remote and semi-autonomous. The Earls of Northumberland and Westmoreland had huge landed estates in the north and carried huge power and influence. The first Council of the North had been established under Richard III and it had been his heir presumptive, John de la Pole, that had acted as president of the council. It had been established to act as a judicial council that would tighten the link between central and regional government. It met in Sheriff Hutton Castle, just outside of the North's largest city of York. Another important aspect of the North's government was the see of the Archbishop of York. The Archbishop of York was responsible for every diocese in the north and also would chair the Northern Convocation, which was essentially a church parliament of bishops and abbots. York was the ancestral duchy of the Yorkists. However, the 50 years of conflict brought about a decline in the strength of the northern nobility, so the threat coming from the north should not be overstated. The greatest threat Henry received was from the commoners during the Yorkshire Rebellion of 1489, but this was a tax rebellion and not a dynastic threat. However, the Yorkshire Rebellion did cause a power vacuum in the north. This is because the rebels killed the 4th Earl of Northumberland. In response to this, Henry sent the Earl of Surrey, a southern lord, to act as president of the Council of the North. This achieved stability for the region and Henry did not face any further threats. In 1499 Surrey was recalled back to the royal court and in 1501, he was replaced as president of the North by Thomas Savage, the Archbishop of York. This not only shows that Henry had a good relationship with the church and its senior clergy, but that he was also confident that the North had stabilized as a region and so would not pose him any further threat. Let's now turn to justices of the peace. These were the closest thing England had to civil servants and there was usually 2 JPs per county. This provided a network of loyal servants for Henry all across the country. They had been used in the Middle Ages to administer justice, but they would develop a wider role under the Tudors. The JPs met 4 times a year at what was known as quarterly sessions, where they would oversee the most serious criminal cases, such as murder and rape. The only crime too serious for the quarterly sessions was treason. This would be escalated to the King's Court. Justices of the peace were elected on a yearly basis. The role was unpaid, but they were given incredible power and influence within their local area. For example, they oversaw the appointment of juries in the local county courts and could dismiss a jury member if they were considered corrupt. Henry often appointed JPs from the gentry class. This has led some historians to argue that he was circumnavigating the old nobility and hiring new men in local government roles. However, Under Henry VII, the role remained modest. They had more power than the sheriff in their local county, but not enough wealth or land to truly compete with the power of the nobility. Let's now return to our overarching question of how did Henry VII govern the regions? This question requires a balanced answer. Like the Plantagenet kings before him, Henry struggled to gain control of Ireland due to the dominant presence of the Irish chieftains. He temporarily replaced the Earl of Kildare with Sir Poynings, but this lasted only a couple of years. However, the law that Poynings used, which created a direct link between the Irish and English parliaments, remained until the Victorian age. However, Henry had more success in Wales, especially given that it was his homeland, and the country was fully under English control. He attempted to place his son and heir Arthur at Ludlow Castle to govern as Prince of Wales, but this was short-lived due to Arthur's untimely death. Henry had to overcome more of a challenge when governing the north, especially following the Yorkshire Rebellion of 1489. However, he did this successfully, through the appointment of the Earl of Surrey as the President of the Council of the North. Finally, Henry tightened up control of every county in England and Wales due to his use of justices of the peace. They acted as the king's law enforcers within the region by sitting at the quarterly sessions and, since they were members of the gentry class, owed their elevated status to the king and so were more likely to show him loyal service. Thank you for listening. Tune into my next lecture to learn about how Henry managed royal finance.